A millionaire who lost his sight during his youth discovers a unique opportunity to regain his sight after 20 years in the dark. He always imagined what it would be like to see his wife's face, the woman who stood by his side throughout his struggle. But when he finally opens his eyes post-op and sees his wife for the first time, he can't believe what's in front of him. Richard Evans, 42, is a New York millionaire who made his fortune investing in technology startups, but lost his sight after a car accident at age 22. Despite living in luxury, he always felt like something was missing. Over the years, he became accustomed to the darkness, and his only constant companion was his wife, Haley, whom he married after becoming blind. Haley was always his light, describing with words every detail of the world that he couldn't see. Richard is in the office with his doctor, Dr. Collins, to discuss the possibility of a groundbreaking surgery that could restore his vision. Dr. Collins giving a brief explanation. Richard, technology has advanced. This surgery has a good chance of success, but I must be honest, there is a small possibility of rejection. Are you prepared for this? Richard speaking thoughtfully. I spent half my life without seeing. What else do I have to lose? The chance to see my wife's face is worth any risk. Haley holds Richard's hand and makes a comment. Whatever the outcome, I will be with you, as I always have been. Richard's eyes turn to his wife's soft voice, as if trying to capture every detail of who she is beyond the words. He smiles with a mix of hope and apprehension. Richard enthusiastically says, Haley, I can't wait to finally see you. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. During this time, Richard and Haley experienced days of anxiety. Haley seems nervous, which Richard interprets as common worry. But there is something about her gestures that doesn't fit. She avoids some conversations and seems to shy away from intimate moments. Richard a little worried. You've been acting strange lately. Is there anything you're not telling me? Haley forcing a smile. It's just anxiety and the fear of creating too many expectations. Haley caresses Richard's face, but there's something evasive about her touch. The moment passes quickly, but a doubt dawns on Richard. He's had to rely on words for years, but now his mind is invaded by a disturbing thought. What if Haley isn't exactly who I imagined? With the support of Haley and Dr. Collins, Richard finally undergoes surgery. The hours of waiting are tense for Haley. In the recovery room, Richard awakens, with his eyes still covered with gauze. Dr. Collins excited and confident. The surgery was a success. Over the next few hours, we will remove the gauze to see if your vision is truly restored. Haley shaking his hand and says, everything will be fine, I'm right here. Richard just nods, but the feeling that something is waiting for him when he opens his eyes doesn't leave his mind. Hours pass, and it's time to remove the bandages. Dr. Collins and Haley are at Richard's side in the clinic. Slowly, the layers of gauze are removed. Dr. Collins giving instructions. Richard, try to open your eyes little by little. The light may be intense at first. With a mix of nervousness and hope, Richard blinks, and the world takes shape before him again. Everything is a little blurry at first, but soon the colors and contours become clear. He sees the doctor at his side and then turns his head to look at Haley. His expression turns from surprise to absolute shock. Richard surprised in a whisper. My God, Haley with a nervous smile. Then what do you think? The woman before Richard is completely different from the image he has constructed in his mind. She is beautiful, yes, but in a way he never expected. Her features do not match the kind and understanding woman he knew only by her voice. Something doesn't make sense. Richard with a confused expression. Are you really you? Haley looks tense, and for a second Richard realizes something is wrong. She looks away, and in that instant, the years-old doubt gains strength. Haley is hiding something from him, but what? In the days following his recovery, Richard tries to get used to his new world. He takes in everything as if it were the first time. The luxurious house, the colors of the sky, Haley's elegant clothes. But although everything seems perfect, something doesn't fit. Haley's words and behavior don't match her image. Small gestures begin to awaken a feeling of strangeness. One afternoon while Haley is away, Richard decides to explore the house alone. He wants to connect with what he once knew only by touch. On the library shelf, he finds something unexpected. An old photo album he has never touched before. Richard opens the album and sees old photos of him and Haley, but something catches his attention. In the first half of the album, another woman appears at his side, young, smiling, and with a familiar expression. He recognizes her voice in the memories he kept for years. This is the Haley he met right after the accident. The woman standing next to him now is someone else. His heart races. He frantically flips through the pages and finds more photos. This woman, the new Haley, appears only in the most recent images. Something isn't right. Despair fills him. Richard speaking to himself with a trembling voice. Who are you? And where is the woman I met? When Haley arrives home, Richard immediately confronts her, still holding the album. His eyes are now open, not just physically, but emotionally. He feels that what he has in front of him is a lie that took years to reveal. Richard nervously holding the album. Who is this woman? This is the Haley I married. Who are you? Haley turns pale, her eyes revealing fear and guilt. She knows she can't run away anymore. Haley speaks in a low voice. I can explain. Richard now with contained anger. There is no explanation for this. You lied to me for years. The woman I imagined, the woman who helped me survive, she is not you. Haley sits on the couch, not knowing where to start. There is a mixture of shame and sadness in her eyes. Haley with a certain fear, the real Haley. She passed away 7 years ago. I was a friend of hers. She asked me before she died to stay by her side. She was afraid that you wouldn't survive without someone to support you. Richard feels the ground disappear beneath his feet. He can't believe what he's hearing. All these years, he's loved a voice, a presence that wasn't even real. Richard somewhat stunned. So, you were never who you said you were? Haley with tears in her eyes. Not completely, but Richard, everything I did was for you. I learned to love you, even if at first it was just because of the promise I made to Haley. Richard is silent for a few minutes, processing everything. He feels an overwhelming mix of pain, confusion, and betrayal. On the one hand, he knows that this woman has been by his side through his most difficult times. On the other, the image he has created for years was destroyed in a matter of seconds. Richard in an overwhelming whisper. I don't even know who you are. The following days are silent and tense. Richard avoids Haley and spends hours locked in his office, reflecting on everything he has discovered. He now sees her face clearly, but he feels more lost than ever. Every gesture of affection that before gave him security, now it seems like a lie. Outside, Haley does her best to maintain her routine, but she is devastated. She watches Richard from a distance, realizing that his silence is far more painful than any argument could be. Richard, thinking to himself, "She gave me support when I needed it most, but how can I trust someone who built our life on a lie?" With his eyes restored, Richard now sees the world, but also realizes that he has never been as emotionally blind as he was before. Everything he knew and trusted has been destroyed. Seeking some clarity, Richard decides to talk to Dr. Collins, his doctor, and also a close friend. Dr. Collins, talking to Richard, "How are you dealing with everything? Recovering your vision is not just a physical process. It also changes the way you see the world and the people around you." Richard, with his feelings downcast, "I thought seeing her face would answer all my doubts, but it only brought more. The woman I loved never existed the way I thought." Dr. Collins kindly, "Love is never about appearance. The real question is, who stood by you when you needed it most?" Dr. Collins's words resonate with Richard. He realizes that despite the lie, the woman he knows today, regardless of her name or past, was the one who held his hand through his darkest hours. Back home, Richard spends hours reflecting. He revisits memories he has kept for years and realizes that the most important moments, the deep conversations in the early hours of the morning, the unconditional support in difficulties, came from this woman. But the pain of the lie still hurts him. Richard, talking to himself, "Can I forgive someone who built our relationship on a lie, or is her truth worth more than that?" He finally decides he can't walk away from this conversation anymore. He finds Haley in the living room, sitting in the dark, as if she's been waiting for him. She looks up, and for a second, it looks like she's ready to hear anything, even the worst. Richard, with a firm but calm tone, "I don't know if I can forgive what you did, but I also can't deny everything you were to me these years." Haley swallows hard, trying to hold back tears. Haley starts to speak, crying, "I never wanted to deceive you, Richard. I just wanted to keep the promise I made to Haley, and in the middle of it, I ended up really loving you." Richard approaches slowly, voice softer now. Richard begins to speak calmly. "You could have left me alone, but you didn't. And maybe, deep down, I owe it to you, but I need time to understand all this." Haley, with feeling of emotion, "And I'll be here. If you give me that chance, I'll be here." The two are silent for a moment, but now it's a different silence. No longer one of avoidance, but of understanding. Richard knows the road ahead won't be easy, but he also realizes that sometimes the truth isn't so simple as it seems. The days pass slowly. The house remains silent, but there is a constant tension in the air, as if a decision is about to be made at any moment. Richard knows the time has come to choose. Either he lets go of the past and tries move on with Haley, or say goodbye forever. Doubt gnaws at his mind, but he realizes the answer won't come from just words. He needs to see beyond what his eyes show now. One day he calls her for a definitive conversation. Haley walks down the stairs with her eyes downcast, as if she already knows what he's about to say. She's ready to accept any choice he makes, even if it means losing him. Richard, looking into her eyes. The real Haley. She was everything I imagined and more. But you were the person who stuck with me, even when I had nothing to offer. Haley, in a whisper. I never wanted to take her place, but I wanted to be enough for you. Richard, speaking sincerely. And you were, more than I realized. He takes a deep breath, his heart racing as if he's about to jump off a cliff. Richard, speaking emotionally and confidently. I'll give you this chance, not because it's easy, but because now I can finally see, and what I see is a person I don't want to lose. Haley begins to cry silently, surprised and relieved by his choice. For a moment, the weight of years of lies and regret seems to dissolve. An emotional Haley promises, I swear there will never be secrets between us again, Richard. This time, everything will be true. Richard, holding her hand. Then let's start again. No ghosts from the past. The tension finally dissipates and they hug. It's not a perfect hug, but it's sincere, the beginning of something new and uncertain, but with the promise of being real. A few weeks pass. Richard and Haley are slowly rebuilding their lives together. There are still difficult moments, emotional scars that take time to heal, but for the first time, everything is out in the open between them. The weight of the past has been left behind, and both begin to discover who they really are, without illusions or lies. One day, Richard decides to do something symbolic. He guides Haley to the terrace of his luxurious apartment, where there is a spectacular view of New York City. This is the first sunset he has actually seen since his youth. Richard, looking at the horizon. I spent 20 years without seeing the world. And you know what? He's more chaotic than I imagined. Haley laughs, and it's an honest laugh, unburdened by old lies. Haley, with a look of relief. Welcome to the mess. He turns and looks at her. For the first time, he sees her for who she really is. An imperfect but true woman who genuinely loves him, despite her mistakes. Richard, confident. I think I can get used to it. Richard takes the old wedding ring he wore and puts it back on his finger, not as an automatic act, but as a conscious decision. This time, he's not accepting the past. He's choosing the future. Their union won't be perfect, but it will be real. Richard, looking into her eyes. For whatever happens. Haley, holding his hand. For whatever happens. As the sun sets, Richard feels a weight lift from his chest. He realizes that true survival was not just physical, but emotional. Seeing again was not the biggest challenge he faced. The hardest part was learning to accept the truth, as painful as it was. And now he's ready to move on with a new perspective on love and life. Epilogue. A year has passed since Richard's surgery. He and Haley not only rebuilt their relationship, but found a new way to love each other without illusions. Things aren't always easy, but every achievement, no matter how small, has a greater meaning now that everything is done authentically. Richard decided to take a break from the business world and began to dedicate himself to something unexpected, motivational talks about overcoming. He shares with other blind and visually impaired people his story and the challenges of learning to see, not just with his eyes, but with the heart. In the last talk of the year, Haley is sitting in the audience, smiling proudly when she sees him on stage. Richard shares, with humor and honesty, the lessons he learned during his journey. Richard on stage to the audience. I thought darkness was my greatest enemy, but I've discovered that sometimes what really holds us back isn't what we can't see. It's what we choose not to see. And when we finally open our eyes, we have the chance to start over. And that is the greatest gift there is. At the end of the talk, Haley joins him on stage. The audience applauds, and Richard looks at her with a sincere smile. For the first time, he feels no shadow from the past, just the light of the present and the promise of a future built together. Richard tells Haley, whispering, "I think we did it right this time." Haley, smiling, says to Richard, "And it's just the beginning." They embrace the image of the two of them standing under the stage lights, not like characters in a fake story, but like two real people, survivors of their own choices and destinies. As we see the story of Richard, a man who lost his vision and upon regaining it, realized that the greatest darkness was not in his eyes, but in the illusions he carried. His overcoming was not just physical, but emotional. Learning to accept the truth and choosing to move forward with courage and sincerity. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs inspiration. Maybe you know someone who is going through a difficult time and needs to remember that starting over is possible, even when the truth hurts. Every new beginning is a chance to see life with different eyes. And now, I want to know, what would you do in Richard's place? Could you forgive such a big lie? Leave your opinion here in the comments and share your ideas. They may inspire others to see life in a new way. Thanks for watching and getting here. You are part of our community of exciting stories, and without you, this project would not be possible. If you like this story, subscribe to the Kollobe Inspired Stories channel to follow more narratives that talk about overcoming, love, and the struggles that shape who we are. Click the bell so you don't miss any updates and be part of this journey with us. See you in the next video. Until then, there is, and remember, the most important thing is not just what we see, but what we choose to see.